And welcome everybody to another edition of the Brody File. We are on location in Austin, Texas at an undisclosed hotel. We're so secretive. Not really. Look, we're here for the Texas Renewal Project. It's part of the American Renewal Project, a national effort to get more pastors involved in the cultural issues of the day. Look, here's the point. There are millions of evangelical Christians, quite frankly, tens of millions of evangelical Christians who do not vote in this country. And so, who's going to lead them? Well, that's right, the pastors. The pastors need to lead the flock. And so that's what this American Renewal Project is all about, to engage in the cultural issues of the day, because look, religious liberty under attack, traditional marriage under attack, and we can go on. We are at, in essence, ground zero for what's going on, because we are, if you will, in dire straits in this country. So speakers come here and talk to these pastors about getting them involved. Our first speaker that we're going to introduce you to, I think you may know him, Governor Greg Abbott, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, very outspoken about his faith, and he came here to Austin to encourage the pastors and give them a little Texas two-step.
Today, more than ever, we need you in your congregations. We need you on the field. We need you in the game, ensuring that elections reflect your values. And the numbers, frankly, are embarrassing. On average, only half of the people in your congregations are even registered to vote. And only half of them actually turn out to vote. The result is that biblical values are underrepresented in capitals across the country. That, more than anything else, explains why during the span of just one president's tenure, the definition of marriage in the United States of America has changed. Hope and prayer are powerful.
Governor Abbott, thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Look, these pastor conferences that are going on all around the country, if pastors are not engaged in the cultural issues of the day, especially today, what does that mean for our country?
The country deteriorates, and that's what we've seen over the past decade. Religious liberties and the issues that, from the Bible, the issues that Christians believe in, have become hostile in the mainstream politics. And there's one key reason for it, and that's because the people who attend these congregations or pastor these congregations do not turn out and vote. And we are dealing with the consequences by the failure of Christians to go vote.
Let me ask you a little bit about this whole idea of political correctness. What do you say to pastors who, in essence, are bowing down to political correctness in many circumstances, that they are, in essence, being corrupted by that today? And what do you have to say to them?
First, the most important thing anyone can ever do is to stand on their principles, stand on their values, and that should be the guiding force in your life. But second, it should be that the politically correct thing to do is to stand for the values that Christ preaches. And if we do that, those are the values and principles upon which this nation were founded upon, and what need to be replicated. And it's because we've been getting away from those values and principles that the United States of America has begun to erode.
Look, you're a governor that speaks out on biblical principles. You talk about God a lot. What has that been like for you to kind of take those slings and arrows to stand strong for your faith in the public square?
You know, if you are constantly working on doing what you know is right, it's not hard to do. And I did it repeatedly when I was the Attorney General of the state of Texas, fighting for the Ten Commandments, fighting for innocent life, fighting to allow cheerleaders to display Bible verses on banners, fighting to keep one nation under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. And so this has just been an extension of what I did as the Attorney General. And again, if you're doing what is right, you can go to bed at night and sleep soundly knowing that you are doing the right thing for the people of your state.
I want to get your take on this whole religious liberty controversy. What I mean by that is that you have religious liberty, obviously a tenet of American society, Judeo-Christian values in our Constitution. But then you also have sexual orientation discrimination codified into law. So you have the discrimination on one hand, you have religious liberty on the other, and there seems to be this conflict. How do you resolve it? What do you do in situations like that?
Well, first, in the United States Constitution and the amendments, there's more than 7,500 words. Not a single one of them mentions the word marriage or gives the federal government authority to regulate marriage. Instead, that has always been left to the states under the 10th Amendment. What you do specifically find mentioned in the United States Constitution is religion. And the First Amendment talks about protecting your religious liberty. So regardless of whatever this decision was concerning marriage, religious liberties are mandated to be protected by the First Amendment. And there are a lot of cases that have already dealt with this issue in other arenas where a person's religious liberty, whether it be a pastor or individual or a business, gets protected so long as there are reasonable accommodations that are made. As this can be done. The most recent big example of this was the Hobby Lobby case, where Hobby Lobby refused to provide abortifacients under the Obamacare law. And the Supreme Court said that's fine so long as reasonable accommodations were made.
Look, I know for you it's all about biblical issues and talking to these pastors, but you heard the crowd out there. They are chanting Abbott for president. What do you make of those chants, and what does the future hold for you? What does God hold for you as it relates to the future here?
Well, I will let God take me wherever God wants to take me. What is important, I think the reason for the standing ovations and for the support is that people are looking for champions who are going to fight for what they believe in and urge them to join in that fight, which is really the most important thing I had to say today. And that is, yes, we have these principles and ideas to fight for, but leaders themselves alone are insufficient to fight for them. We need the masses of the people in this nation, especially those who attend church, to stand with us on the battlefield fighting these battles. If everyone who attended church, and that's all, if just everyone who attended church had gone out and voted, marriage today in America would still be traditional marriage between one man and one woman.
That is Greg Abbott, the Texas governor, here on the Brody File. All right, look, when we roll on from Austin, Texas, Mike Huckabee, that's right, he was here too. And there are a lot of presidential candidates that come this way as part of the American Renewal Project's efforts. We'll explain and talk about Mike Huckabee's efforts in this regard when we come back. And welcome back, everybody, here to Austin, Texas. The American Renewal Project, they call this the Pastors-and-Pews Conference. They put them on all over the country, trying to get pastors engaged in the cultural issues of the day. Mike Huckabee has been speaking at these for years, and we caught up with him. Well, actually, we saw him on stage. There he is. Look at that. Hey, he's speaking to pastors about making sure they get involved. And yeah, there's some stump speech involved as well in this too. But he is definitely speaking out, especially on the issue of abortion and marriage.
There are many in our party that would say, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to defund Planned Parenthood. That's wonderful. But that's not enough. Defunding one of many organizations that carry out this atrocity is a nice small step. But I have suggested that we do something much bolder than that, that we actually follow the Constitution. I've indicated that as the next president, what I would do is to do something that should have been done 42 years ago. And that is invoke the 5th and 14th Amendment. The 5th Amendment, which says that you cannot deprive a person of their life or liberty without due process. And that all people under the 14th Amendment are equal under the law. And there's equal protection. Now, if that is true, and it is, and if that is what the Constitution guarantees every person, then there's only one question to resolve. Is the unborn child a person? And I think most of us would say, as I certainly would say, you better believe it is a person. Biologically, scientifically, that is a fact. And if we're talking about a person, then why doesn't this government protect under the 5th and 14th Amendment the rights of that person for due process and equal protection? Invoking that as president means that rather than being on the defensive and saying, let's incrementally get a little restriction here and a little restriction there, let's declare that under the Constitution, we will protect the unborn child from the moment of conception, make the left sue us, take us to court, force for the right to kill the baby rather than make us play defense as we have for 42 years, having us to go to court protecting the life of the unborn child. Let's change this process and abolish abortion, not just restrict it. And while we're at following the Constitution, and I know that's a novel idea, given that we've had a president for 7 years who has decided that the Constitution wasn't all that useful, but he had a pen and a phone. Might I suggest that no president is under obligation to follow the tyranny of the courts. I don't know why it is we somehow forgot the lessons of 9th grade civics, but it's not that complicated. There are 3 branches of government. Each of those branches equal to the other 2. And as radical as this sounds, folks, it's pretty simple. No one branch can exceed the authority of the other 2. And we have lived under about the past 70 years under this doctrine of judicial supremacy, which says, well, once the courts rule, it's the law of the land. Where did we come up with that? Because the Supreme Court is exactly that, the Supreme Court, meaning it is the highest court within the judicial system, one of the 3 branches of government. It is not the supreme branch. It is not super over the other 2 branches, the executive and the legislative. And a clear reading of the Constitution makes it absolutely certain that the court can't make a law. Only Congress can create a law signed by the executive and enforced.
Mike Huckabee here on the Brody File. All right, when we come back from Austin, Texas, not Ted Cruz, but Pastor Rafael Cruz, Ted's father. You want to know where he gets his firebrand style from? Oh, check out his father. He's here in Austin at the American Renewal Project. Back in a moment. And welcome back, everybody, to the Brody File here in Austin, Texas. Look, the American Renewal Project doing so many things around this country. They really want to get pastors involved in the cultural issues of the day, speaking out, leading, and maybe even some of them will actually run for political office. As a matter of fact, a few hundred have already said yes, and they expect a lot more in 2016 for actual pastors to get out of the pews, or out of the pews, I should say, out of the pulpit, and into the political arena. Now, they're going to do both, and that's basically what's happening here. One guy that knows all about the pulpit and politics is Rafael Cruz. Not Ted Cruz, Rafael Cruz, the father of Ted Cruz. He's 80 years old, or he's around 80. We got a Wikipedia that, but anyhow, trust me, he's around 80 years old. And boy, I'll tell you what, he travels all around the country. He is a traveling preacher. That's what he is, and he gets pastors riled up like you've never seen before.
I think the biggest lie that we have swallowed is this: politics cannot legislate morality. Have you heard it? That is a lie. Politics legislates morality all the time. What do you think it was when they removed prayer from school, or when they removed the Bible from school, or when they legalized the murdering of 57 million babies, or when they legalized a homosexual marriage? Is that not legislating morality? Let's go back for a minute to Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, people mourn. If the wicked are in authority, they are going to legislate their wicked brand of morality. Nazi Germany, Pastor Martin Niemöller, he says, first they came for the Jews, for the socialists. And I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Finally, they came for me, and there was no one left to speak on my behalf. Pastor Niemöller was captured one evening, thrown into a cell with a bunch of drunks. He was a Lutheran pastor, so he was dressed all in black with a pastoral collar. The next morning, a Lutheran chaplain walks in and sees Niemöller in that cell, dressed just like him, and says, "Brother, why are you there?" Niemöller says, "My dear brother, considering what's happening to our nation today, why are you not in here with me? It is about time we draw a line in the sand and we get involved in the battle." Listen to our Sunday school teachings to our children on Ephesians 6. Oh, we talk all about the armor of God, but are we talking about what the armor is for? The armor is for getting in battle. We need to talk about the battle. There is a battle for the future of our children and our children's children. There's a battle in America, and we have been AWOL. Let me leave you with some action steps. Number one, we need to everybody understand that voting is our civic responsibility. When such a small percentage of the population, as we've seen with the previous speaker, are electing people, you know something? Let me tell you the good news. There are more of us than there are of them. Now let me tell you the bad news. The majority of the us have been sitting on our pews singing hallelujah, or sitting in our couches watching the idiot box instead of getting in the battle. Number two, it's about time we preach about the issues that are affecting America today. George Barna did a survey earlier this year. He asked a group of evangelical pastors, "Do you believe that the Bible addresses every issue facing America today?" 90% of the pastors said yes. And that sounds very good until you hear the second question. He asked them, "Do you preach on the biblical solutions to those issues?" Only 10% said yes. God help us. That means 80% of those pastors know the truth and refuse to preach on it.
Rafael Cruz, fire and brimstone here on the Brody File. All right, when we come back, the Brody File introduces the Brody File. That's right, we're actually speaking here too. A narcissistic moment, and we'll let the clip run long when we come back. And welcome back, everybody, to Austin, Texas. All right, look, we got to talk about one of the top speakers at this event. Oh, it's me. Thank you so much. No, okay, I'm not a top speaker. I'm one of the guys who just goes on stage and talks. But look, I come here as a private citizen concerned about the country, and I had a chance to, I guess, if you want to call it, wax a little poetic to these pastors. Have a look.
What would happen if we had a traditional marriage convention? What if we had a convention that said homosexuality is sinful? How many of those presidential candidates would show up to that convention? I think there'd be a few. I think there'd be a few, but I think that's the key, a few. You know, it's interesting. What's happening here is that on the life issue, they spoke God's truth about the life issue. The political consequences followed. It was fine. It worked. But look on the marriage issue. The political consequences, these candidates on the marriage issue, many of them put the political consequences first. And they put God's truth second. They have it backwards. And that's a problem. That's a problem. We need to call them out on it. We need to call them out on it. So, look, I mean, I think there's that going on. And I think the reality is this. Remember, it's truth and consequences. So in other words, you can speak God's truth on marriage, and you can have political consequences that actually benefit you in a positive way. I would contend that if a presidential candidate got up and defended traditional marriage and made it one of his bully pulpit talking points, not talking points, but bully pulpit issues, indeed, you would have many millions of evangelical Christians agreeing with that person. And you can actually start to start a revolution as it relates to an evangelical army of folks, of pastors, of Christians all around this country who believe in traditional marriage. But we need political candidates that are going to, quote, suck it up and do it. So. You know, I wish, Can we talk about Donald Trump for just 1 second? Oh, I know. Okay, look, I think, now don't have a heart attack when I say this, but I do believe evangelicals can learn a lesson from Donald Trump. I really do. Do you have the smelling salts? Are you ready? All right. Here's the way I see it. Forget all of first of all, the lesson we cannot learn from Donald Trump is anything on humbleness, I think for sure. Okay, let's get that out of the way now. And he says a few other things, but look, what is Donald Trump? He's bold, right? Do we need to be bold as pastors out here? Yes. He doesn't care about political correctness. He's not worried about the crowd out there. Well, okay, he has $10 billion, but we have Jesus. All right? He may be doing this for his own reasons, but we know the reason we're doing it for. Imagine if pastors in this country stood boldly and didn't worry about political correctness and actually not just preached the Word of God, but said, forget about the political consequences. We'll take that as it comes.
That is David Brody on the Brody File. Oh, that's hilarious. All right, when we come back, an Oy Vey moment of the week. Back in a moment. And welcome back, everybody, to the Brody File. All right, look, before we leave you, we have an Oy Vey moment of the week. Guess what? On the Oy Vey moment of the week, literally, I kind of morphed into my Jewish believer mode. You know, I do a little evangelical, but I do Jewish as well. I do bar mitzvahs. Now, I don't do bar mitzvahs, but take a look when I went kind of into the Oy Vey Jewish mode.
I was bar mitzvahed at the age of 13. And by the way, let me do this impression now, if you don't mind. Can everybody, this is my evangelical look. Everybody, it's a nice look, right? Hold on, wait for it. Do we have a close-up? Here's my Jewish look. You know, I can do both. As a matter of fact, I feel verklempt.
Now that is an Oy Vey moment. That does it from Austin, Texas, everybody. Until next time in the stuffy old studio, we'll see you then. God bless. Have a great week.